I've played through Elden Ring a few times in my life. I've done it on PS5, I've done it on PC, I've even done it on a school computer. But all of these times, my actions were a little pusillanimous. I've used every cheap strategy you can imagine, run past every optional enemy, and leveled up beyond what's possible with the normal limitations of grinding. But with the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC coming out, and my pride on the line, I've decided to atone for my sins and beat this game like a man. I'm not running away from any enemies that aggro me, I'm not using wimpy strats, and I'm using the Elden Ring the way Mr. Hidetaka Miyazaki intended, with all 7 great runes. I'm not even running away from grafted side. Well, that was quick, allocating my flasks because magic is for losers. And it's time for the first boss of the run, the Tree Sentinel. Unlike Kai Cenat, this did not take me 7 hours, and I got on my first try in what I hoped would set the tone for the run. I marched my Lord Voldemort looking character over to Gatefront, genocided their village, and dumped my runes to the deck so I could use the flail. Stormgate ended up being the first major roadblock for this run. Normally you can just run through this area like Jameer Gibbs through the Las Vegas Raiders defense, but because of the rules I set for myself, I had to fight like Darren McCarty playing against the Colorado Avalanche. Unlike Darren McCarty against the Colorado Avalanche, however, it did not go that well.
Damn you, Johnny Big Feet!
After getting past that, and strategically eliminating people outside Stormvale, it was time for Market, who did not go smoothly. I wasn't doing damage with Club, so I switched to the Flare for the Spinning Chain Ash 4 and took him down in a couple of attempts. I dumped some runes into Vigor and tried to make my way over to the 3rd church to get my Physic Flask. I got bodied, so I decided to head into Liurnia where I would clear out a camp and make my way to Lascar Ruins. I wanted to get into Raya Lucaria, but this Royal Revenant was not having it, so I made my way over to Boil Prawn Shack to get my weapon for the run, Iron Balls. I also completed Raya's quest since killing Blackguard already got me the amulet. Next up were the Smithing Stones, which got my balls to +3. This still wasn't enough to actually beat the Royal Revenant. At this point I decided to get Smithing 2s. This was a much more tedious task than the others because of the fact they were all guarded by super annoying enemies. But that's what they were, tedious, not difficult. Oh no. Some of the last Smithing Stone 2s that I needed were guarded by a group of 3 lobsters. Somehow I got lucky and one de-aggroed me, which I took to my advantage to eliminate all of them. +5 balls in hand, I went to Raya Lucaria, the intended way. As it turns out, there's quite a few smithing stones outside the entrance. Next I wanted to upgrade my weapon a bit more, and in my way there were these stupid flowers. I'm not kidding when I say both of these took 5 minutes each to kill. But now it's time to make my way to the ruin-strewn precipice to get access to the Atlas Plateau, and more smithing stones for my balls. The precipice didn't give me too much trouble, just scaled my way up while grabbing smithing stones, then beat the crap out of the car. Now, something that I didn't expect to be so challenging here was Lanciax. It takes almost no damage to strike, so this was a bit of a struggle, much like how it's a struggle for the Chicago Bears to pick good quarterbacks in the draft. I took Raya's hand to Volcano Manor and made my way to the Godskid Noble Arena.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
Yeah, I was practically healing the boss. Some buffs were in order. I went to finally go get the Physic Flasks, as well as the Spiked Crystal Tier and the Axe Talisman for the charge attack damage buff. I also went through Fort Height, because why not? Next up I went and got the Strength Tier from Stormhill, and I was set to fight Godskin Diabito.
No, Diabito. Roll back to kitchen.
Oh.
Damage still wasn't great, so I decided to parry with this jank Poke Shield and somehow won on my first attempt. Next it was time to do the first Great Rune in the run, Godric the Grafted. Birds were a pain as usual, but other than that it wasn't too horrible to get to the arena. As for the fight, I just buffed up and he'd be no match for my Iron Balls. I bought the Buckler from Gostock and went to Raya Lucaria where we'd find the first major change for most of my runs. I've never actually fought Smaragd before this run. I always just take the key and leave, so this actually took a couple attempts. The Academy was easy enough to get through. Nothing really out of the ordinary except for the run to Red Wolf, which actually was kinda difficult because of the non-stop spell spamming. Moongrum also killed me a non-zero number of times. Because of her negative poise, Renala fell in like 3 hits and I had my second Great Rune out of 7. Next on the hit list was Radahn. Contrary to what I expected, the run through Caelid was surprisingly easy, although agonizing. Each horde of skeletons took a lot of time to kill, and the attacks from dogs weren't exactly the easiest to dodge. We'll come back to this one. I decided that the best course of action would actually be to go to Landell. However, I encountered some problems. 2 really large problems. So I just went around. Something works smarter, not harder. Killed some golems, Draconic Tree Sentinel, and made my way into Landell. I did also upgrade my balls again, and made my way into Weeping Peninsula to grab some Sacred Tears since I hadn't gotten around to doing that yet. Landell went smoothly until I got to this gargoyle. The difficulty of this was a combination of this guy being tall, not having leg targets, and my iron balls having hitboxes the size of my pea. After not too long, I was able to kill him. It would be a real shame if I were to have to fight something similar in a few minutes. Goldfree and Morgoth almost went down easy. And next up for me would be to kill Rykard. The Fire Whip guy was annoying, but once I got to the arena, it was just your standard fight. I've been leveling up strength throughout the run for my balls, so the Serpent Hunter would be crazy strong. I also went to go grab the Lionel armor, which is what I'd be using for the rest of the run. This is normally where one would skip to mountaintops, but here, Forgotten Lands posed a significant challenge. Remember when I said it would be a shame if I had to fight something similar to the gargoyle? I had to. This Blackblade Kindred was the bane of my existence for a solid 20 minutes. After beating him, I went to mountaintops and grabbed the Smithing Stone Bellbearing 3, upgraded my balls once more, and did everyone's favorite run. Most of it at least. I got stopped by Borealis, which is just another dragon and only took a couple of attempts. After this, I had to deal with a very large fire monk camp, and these actually gave me more trouble than I like to admit. The large ones could really do a lot of damage, and if you weren't careful, would deplete your flasks quite quickly. Once that was done, it was just a matter of one final climb to Fire Giant, where you can fight everyone's favorite boss. No, not Fire Giant. The camera, silly. With Fire Giant dead, I decided to go get the necessary items needed to get to the Halig Tree. The giant skeletons on the way to Castle Sol were a pain to deal with, but I figured out that you can just stand in certain spots where they won't be able to hit you. I also learned that the skeletal enemies could be killed for good by attacking their skulls after we beat them the first time. Not sure how I didn't know that before. The Deathrite Bird is actually another enemy that I haven't fought before. It seemed like I was a good level for this fight, and it was actually pretty fun. Castle Sol was an experience. The lions at the gate could do a number on you, and some of the knights had what seemed like infinite health for whatever reason. Right before the Nile fight, I took the elevator, which made for an easy run back to the boss, which I didn't need because I beat him the first attempt after using the elevator. Go figure. Next, I decided to go for Moog. Just go through the snowfield, find Ordina, make my way to the teleporter. Okay, never mind. I decided the best course of action here was to upgrade my balls further, so the natural place to do this was to go to Farum Azula to get the Smithing Stone Bellbearing 4, which is where I would run into unironically the single worst part of this run. This dragon was blocking any further progress into Farum Azula. I was able to listen to Nirvana's Nevermind 2 times through before I was able to kill it, which is 1 hour, 28 minutes, and 14 seconds in normal person time. The rest of Farum up until Godskins wasn't so bad, with me not dying a single time. Earlier when I said that the Fire Giant in the camera was everyone's favorite boss in the game, I lied. I actually meant Godskin Duo. Oh god, I'm doing negative damage. If there was only some Ash 4 that increased my damage as well as the amount of poise buildup I could do. Yeah, it was time to go get my revenge on X6 to go get Cragblade. Now, how do I get past this campsite? Yeah, I just let the game do most of the work for me. I only had to go kill a couple enemies before I could pick up Cragblade and put it on my balls. I was still barely doing damage to the Godskins, but the poise damage increase made this a lot better. The ability to repose to do damage without risking getting hit was a lifesaver. This fight still took an hour. Thinking I had plus 25 balls in hand, I picked up the Dragon Crest Shield Talisman plus 2 and made my way to the Dragon Temple rooftop site of Grace, with some mishaps to the Crucible Knight, so I could finally go back and kill the Sanguine Noble that was in my way. Going back through Mogwing was an interesting endeavor. First, I had to go all the way back to the start from the Palace Approach Ledge Road site of Grace, where I was super lucky to not have any birds in my path. Next was to climb all the way to the Mausoleum entrance, where each skeleton took a ton of time to kill. There was also this blob thing. The Sanguine Nobles inside the Mausoleum itself were a pretty tough challenge too. They can parry and riposte, so I had to be pretty careful with that combined with blood loss. Next was the Moog fight, which I had never done before while being appropriately leveled, and it was honestly pretty underwhelming. I had to be careful about when I could heal, but there wasn't any super tricky attack patterns. It was also at this point that I realized I never actually fully upgraded my balls, so I did that. After killing Moog, I told Gideon about the locations of the demigods, which would be important for one fight later. Next up was Ordina, where I somehow managed to just avoid the invisible Black Knife assassin and made my way into the Halo Tree. This was by far the most annoying dungeon that I had to go through in this challenge. The Oracle envoys just chilling on random branches were tough to deal with because of all the running around I had to do. There were also rod flowers on the ground that I had to deal with while a greater Oracle envoy would snipe me. The run to Loretta was a pain too. Leon and Misbegottens aren't fun enemies to kill, and the fact that I had to climb up lots of ladders wasn't enjoyable either. There was also this area with spirit collar snails and crystallians, and finding a location of them wasn't that great of an experience. Luckily, I was able to get to this elevator, so I didn't ever have to do that again. Now I got to fight my favorite boss in the game, Loretta, which was a nice break from all the pain and suffering I had to endure for the rest of this dungeon. Not only was the next grace really far away, the enemies I had to fight were pretty tough. Oh, and the door was blocked by half the population of Trinidad and Tobago. Rather than dealing with this, I took some inspiration from a certain yellow sponge.
Now it's time to bring it around town.
Yeah, it turns out you can get past that gateway without aggravating any of the guards by doing a little bit of parkour. The rest of the Halo Tree was pretty easy up until our bestiest friend Melania, Blade and Mikola. I actually got pretty good at the first phase of the fight, it's just that during our second phase, her particles make it hard for me to see anything. Oh, shut up. This fight took about 2 hours of playtime, and I have a recording file which is just me fighting her. After disproving Melania's claim by counterexample, my sights were set on finishing the game. The Draconic Tree Sentinel in front of Malekith's arena wasn't an issue, and neither was Malekith himself, who went down on an attempt too. Next up was Gideon, who were gonna let yap. The point of this challenge was to not be a coward, so I'm actually gonna fight this man, which is why I told him about the demigods earlier, since he gets stronger when you give him information. As it turns out, this fight isn't a cakewalk when it's actually a fight. Spamming Common and Scarleonia is actually a somewhat effective strategy. Godfrey was up next, who wasn't that tough either. My balls did make it really easy to whiff, however. And at last, it was time for Radabis, the final 2 boss fights of Elden Ring. First up was Radagon of the Golden Order, a mythical being the same as Queen Marika, and I would expect nothing but the most challenging of fights. Maybe an insanely high health pool and crazy attack patterns which needed the most precise inputs to dodge. Maybe some sort of crazy gimmick where I would need to craft an entirely new strategy to defeat. Maybe he does so much damage that I would need to be absolutely perfect with my dodge roll timings. Or maybe, just maybe, he would somehow go down within 30 seconds of me entering the arena. Yeah, no clue how that happened. Elden Beast was a similar level of difficulty, just with a bunch more filler because I had to run away from Elden Stars and a couple ring attacks. Finally, we had one more great room to obtain, Scar Scourger Dawn. I was actually looking forward to this. Normally when I fight him, I'm crazy underleveled in a bingo match, and I needed some much needed revenge. He was dead before he could even transition into Phase 2. And that's Elden Ring all great runes, but I tried to reclaim any honor I had lost from my previous runs. It was actually a pretty fun run to do, and I wasn't expecting so much of the challenge to come from regular enemies. Oh yeah, I still have some unfinished business.